Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Wednesday Thoughts. My name is Carolina, and I'm here with Rev Doc. How are you, Rev?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm looking at our faces. We're both happy today. That's a good thing. That means that we have peace of mind and we are of sound mind and spirit. So it's a good thing we're talking about the topic that we'll discuss today. But I'm
Yeah.
great.
So, we're talking about mental health.
Mhm.
So, it's a very important topic that sometimes we avoid to talk about. Or we're afraid, or sometimes we feel ashamed to talk about it, right?
Mhm. And that's unfortunate because one of the things that we are accomplishing in our society and also in many churches, not all churches, we're removing the stigma
Mm.
of mental illness, of people who have times of depression, maybe those who are more prone to anxiety and some of those kind of things. Um, Instead of saying that those people are defective, bad people, they're sinners, or who knows what, simply to say that this is part of life. We don't say that somebody is a defective and bad person if they twist their ankle and need crutches for a while. If we go through times of mental distress and we're out of sorts, that's a very natural and normal thing that a lot of people, even really good people, have gone through. So yes, we can talk about this and not, we don't have to whisper about it because it's an important topic because it's just part of human existence.
So let's start by talking about the difference between mental health and mental illness. How would you
Okay.
describe them?
Yeah, that's a good question to get this started because when you introduced this topic, you introduced it as a discussion about mental health. Well, mental health needs some kind of a definition, and then mental illness, in a sense, is a bit of an opposite of that, or a departure from that. So the way I describe mental health is it pertains to our emotions, our ways of thinking and the ways that we interact with other people. So mental health plays itself out in our bodies, how we feel, our minds, how we think, and our relationships with other people. And when all of that is in harmony, I think we would describe that as good mental health. Our thoughts are right. Our feelings, though they might go up and down from day to day, are not dominating us and taking us down far. And I'll tell you what, when you have those things going for you, your relationships with other people are so much better. So I refer to this as sort of the harmony of those things.
So can we say that anyone can have moments of poor mental health, but
Yes.
not everyone has mental illness?
Oh yeah. Nobody's on an even keel all the time. Um, So we all have days where we're up and down. And some days you'll wake up and you just will feel grouchy, grumpy, or maybe fearful, um, and so forth. There will be days where people don't bother you at all, and some days where you think you're just going to scream, and you're just not in harmony with other people. So it does go up and down. I think where mental illness comes in and how that differs from mental health is mental illness is when this is a longer term thing or a constantly recurring issue with people. Their emotions are stuck in ways that are less than helpful to them, and something that they're enjoying living with. Their thinking can start to get all messed up. And then their relationships do as well, and it's ongoing. And so, one of the things that we try to do, we who work with human beings, ministers do, certainly, is to try to bring people back into harmony. And I sometimes use the analogy of a piano. Carolina, remember a while back when the piano tuner came to Greendale People's Church and he was right outside our offices and he's pounding away at these keys and you're just like, ah! It just sounded just so clattery and clangy. But he was trying to bring them into the right tune, each note. And he'd have a tuning fork, and the tuning fork would be the right note. And then he'd try to get that key to be absolutely in harmony, in sync with that particular tuning thing. And when we are out of sorts and we're experiencing a mental distress, if not mental illness, we're like a piano that's out of tune. And so once we get back into tune, we're happier. We make better music, shall we say, with the way we speak and think, and our relationships are better. So that's my analogy that works for me.
I really like that analogy, the piano analogy. Let's talk about mental health or mental illness and Christianity. How did the Bible and the Christianity faith treat mental illness before there was such a thing called as mental illness?
Exactly. You won't find mental illness in the Bible. It's not a term, and it's not the way they spoke back then. So I would say that when you go to the Bible, again, you're dating this back long before we were calling things mental illness, and we had things called psychologists or mental health counselors and so forth. Definitely, when you go to the Bible and you take a look at stories and poems and descriptions of God at work with people, you'll see that the Bible understands the human being as deep. There's depth to us. Psalm 139 says, we are fearfully and wonderfully made, and God knows us better than we know ourselves. Psalm 139 is a psalm about mental health, you might say. No matter where I go, there you are, Lord. I can go to the farthest reaches of the world, and there you are. You know my thoughts before I know them. You know my ways. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, Lord. So it's the words of somebody who's in harmony, because there's depth to the person. Nowadays, I think one of the things that when it comes to treating mental illness and treating people who are in mental or emotional distress, is that by and large, and I think those who are in that field would agree with me to some extent, the insurance companies determine how mental health is treated and so forth. So an insurance company will say only so many visits are permitted for this patient, and therefore you have to get down to the business real fast and address these issues and try to fix things real quickly. Medications might be administered, which wasn't the case in biblical times, certainly. So one of the things that we can add as Christian faith and the Christian faith is matters of faith and hope and so forth, the spiritual dimension that goes deeper than some of the things that mental health counselors are forced because of the demands of the insurance companies saying, you have to do this. We will not reimburse this patient more than 3 or 4 visits and so forth. They have to get down. They have to try to accomplish something quickly. And therefore, a lot of their things pertain to trying to help people with more surface issues, whereas the Bible and the Christian faith is more, it goes deeper than all of that. And that's one of the ways that the Christian faith can contribute to the mental health of people. It's not just a quick fix. It's getting down to the depth of who we are, down beneath the ground, down to the roots of who we are. And faith and hope and things like that play a big role in helping us become more healthy at a deeper level.
Yeah, correct. So is there anywhere in the Bible where it talks directly to those who are suffering from depression or they feel hopeless? Or even have anxiety?
For where I would refer people in what I find very helpful is the book of Isaiah in the Hebrew scriptures, the Old Testament. Because the circumstances that Isaiah the prophet addresses are people who are dealing with a high degree of anxiety. They had enemy armies, foreign armies who were threatening them. Their lives were threatened and in danger. They were at times feeling hopeless that how are they going to get out of these circumstances? Isaiah addresses people who feel as though their lives have been lost and everything that they own is gone. And he has to speak a word to them. Isaiah speaks to people who are out of harmony, you might say, not just because of mental distress like anxiety and hopelessness, but for those who are being, you might say, narcissistic, caring only about themselves. And narcissism is a popular word these days when it comes to mental illness. It usually pertains to somebody who is focused so much on themselves that they harm other people. And there certainly was the case for the people in Jerusalem that Isaiah addressed. So I go to that a lot. And the interesting thing about going to Isaiah is the emphasis is on a word from the Lord. The grass withers, the flowers fade, but the word of the Lord stands forever, Isaiah says in chapter 40. A word is something that comes to us from outside that brings a healing aspect when it's a word from the Lord. And Isaiah the prophet speaks a word to people. Now, certainly the way mental illness is treated in our day is something from the outside, often medication. But also something from the outside is the word of the therapist who tries to speak reason and hope and a process to the people that will help them out of their mental distress into greater harmony and emotional and mental well-being. It pertains, the word is, the word from the Lord alters our thinking into something that's more helpful. It's a word that says, do not be afraid, for I am with you. I have not forgotten or abandoned you. When you pass through the waters and through the fires, I will be with you and I will see you through. Now, when you start putting that kind of thought into your head, your thinking becomes more harmonious and more healthy. You are less inclined to distress. And so the treatment, you might say, that comes from the book of Isaiah is not medication. It's not a therapist. It's a word from the Lord that alters the thinking of the people and brings them back into better harmony with themselves, with God, and with each other. That all is not lost. And I mean, anxiety, I think all of us can speak to that. Anxiety is usually these fearful thoughts that start to take us, and we start imagining worst case scenarios. And with that come terrible feelings, and our lives become diminished. A good, healthy word from the Lord is very, very beneficial. And I go to the book of Isaiah. So, for example, the word trust occurs a lot in Isaiah. Trust, not just faith that, oh, I believe these things, but an actual trust. When you really trust someone or something, you relax. And one of the things that Isaiah speaks to the people in Israel are things like, it is by rest and repentance that you will be saved, and quietness and trust will be your strength. Just be quiet, just relax, just trust, and therein you'll have strength. Isaiah chapter 26, God will keep people in peace with steadfast mind because you trust in God. Trust in the Lord forever, because the Lord God, the rock eternal, is good. So to make a long story short and to answer your question, the book of Isaiah really speaks to some of those things, and other things as well.
This is just like Jesus take the wheel, right?
Yeah, Jesus, take the wheel. At a certain point, that is what you have to do. In the book of Isaiah, in chapter 28, there's something about he who trusts in the Lord God, Jehovah, Yahweh, will not panic. Panic is an aspect of mental distress, maybe not mental illness, unless it becomes really exaggerated. Just trust in the Lord. And often one of the things we need to do is to hear a word from outside spoken to us, and actually believe that word and trust in it. And it begins to change our thinking, which can often change the way we feel and the way we go about life. So I find that the matter of faith and going to the Bible and engaging in something greater than just myself is very beneficial to my mental state of mind. So,
What do you think of moments when people they feel distressed, depressed, anxious, and they think, oh, but why God is letting me have these feelings? Why am I this way? Why He made me this way if He loves me?
yeah. Yeah, why? Yeah. Wouldn't it be so much nicer if we were always comfortable and we were always at peace? But that's just not the way it works, because just as we can have a nice meal and be hungry 6 hours later, we can arrive at peace of mind only to find ourselves later on in distress. We just are not. We're dynamic. We change things. Things develop in our lives. We don't stay stuck. We're not like a piano key. That's one of the things Dostoevsky talked about. The human being is not a piano key. For as much as I use that as an analogy, a piano key can only play one note, and that's all it is. The human being, on the other hand, has many more dimensions than just that one note. And one of the things that we can play is a healthy note, and we can fit ourselves into good music. So
Is it true that we need the darkness to be able to see the light?
I think so. Even you talk about happiness. Okay, so people would say happiness, to be happy is to have mental health. Well, happiness comes and goes. Happiness is a temporary state of mind. Sigmund Freud, a psychiatrist, said happiness is the experience of a slight improvement in your circumstances. He said, for example, if you were beating your thumb with a hammer and you stopped, you'd be happy, because that's an improvement in your situation. Happiness is simply a temporary improvement in your situation that will soon become the new normal, and you're going to want a new improvement. That's one of the things that psychology has discovered and does talk about is, the person who wins the lottery today and the person who suffers a bad injury in an accident today, 1 year from now, will generally be at the same place, the same state of mind that they were before they either suffered catastrophe or won the great lottery. We eventually hit this new equilibrium, this new state. And that's why people just keep wanting more and more and more things, because they want this constant improvement, and that can become a mentally distressing thing as well. So the contentment, the Bible talks about contentment. The Apostle Paul talks about contentment. Godliness with contentment is great gain. To just be content. I think that's one of the words that comes from the Bible, that comes from the Lord, that helps us with our own state of mind. To just be content, to be grateful for what you have. One of the things that people forget, we are prone to look for the problems in our lives more than we are uh, inclined to count all our blessings. When you count all your blessings, you'd be surprised how the way you feel improves.
Yeah.
So gratitude is a great way to maybe describe mental health, to live a life of content, gratitude.
Now, what would be a good biblical remedy for an angry person?
That's one of the things that I've encountered a great deal in my ministry. In particular, when I worked in New Bedford, a great deal with people who were in substance use disorder conditions, with people who were suffering in any number of ways. The anger and the bitterness that they have in life that plays itself out in destructive ways to them and to others. Um, most people didn't get that way by choice. They went through some very difficult circumstances, and they were probably abused or treated badly as children, or maybe even into their adulthood. And one of the things that I would say to people often is, what you are describing is a great explanation of why you are angry and bitter, but it's not a good enough excuse. We can explain it, but let's not excuse it. Let's try to come out of it. So one of the things that people need to accept is, that state of mind is not helpful and beneficial to them. And they can explain why they got that way, but not to use that as an excuse for bad behavior, but to continue to try to improve their state of mind, to get some good mental health counseling, to engage in a life of faith, I think can be a very helpful thing. So, and for those who have suffered trauma and are dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder, they definitely need help from those who are skilled and trained and educated to do so, licensed mental health counselors and psychologists. But I would also encourage people to begin to explore and live into a life of faith, that the world is not dark and dangerous only, that there is good in the world and that God is active, and that there are good people out there who will be helpful. So that changes the situation into a more trusting, and trust is a big thing in mental health.
Yeah, finding Jesus in the storm is possible.
Well, that's what Jesus would often do. When they would get all distressed, they were out on the boat and the waves were rocking the boat. Jesus was sleeping. They woke him up and said, "What is wrong with you, Lord? Don't you know we're going to die?" And he says, "Why are you so distressed?" He told the storm to be calm. It was. But, sometimes we need the reminder that God is with us through all things, and we can be trusting and patient and look forward to good days ahead. And I think that brings some mental health to people.
Yeah. And then bonus question.
Yes.
How can churches help people who are struggling with mental illness?
I think first of all, once again, remove the stigma. To say that they're bad people, defective people. The truth is, we're all imperfect. I have bad days. I sometimes say things I wish I hadn't said. And so but for the grace of God, there go I with those who have it far worse than I do. So what churches need to do is to remove that stigma. I also think churches need to emphasize this a little bit more. One of the things that churches have been emphasizing so much is we need to be doing these activities. We need these programs. We need to give food to people and so forth. And yes, we do. But one of the things that a church can do that other organizations can't, you can get a bag of groceries a lot of places. You can have you can get help in certain ways from a lot of agencies and organizations, governmental and so forth. One place you can't get a life of trust and faith is any place other than the church. And when the church can really help people develop their life of faith, in a place where they can feel free to talk about this and explore it and hear other people's stories. I think they find great comfort. So I think we need to shift our emphasis more to faith, and also to say that, you know, we're all imperfect. We're all on this journey together, and let's work together to develop a more stable, harmonious life in ourselves and among each other. So it's a matter of a shift of emphasis, I think, back to what faith was all about in the biblical times, that I think would be helpful for churches to, you know, take more seriously.
I think throughout the years, we're doing a little bit more better. We're talking about the topic, and we're trying to eliminate the stigma.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the things you really have to do, that I think would be a big step in the right direction.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Rev Talk, for this conversation. And thank you, everyone who is watching.
Trust in the Lord. It's in quietness and trust that you will find strength. We're all in this together. We all have bad days. We all have struggles. You're not an exception to the rule. We're all in this together, and God is with us, and we can all work together toward a better state of mind and relationships with each other.
Yes, and remember that you're not alone.
No.
Not alone in this. Okay, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hey, see you again.
If you or someone you know is struggling with depression or suicidal thoughts, please seek help. Contact the National Suicidal Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255.